for this Sunday prayer for peace. Today, before our prayer, we're going to have a short message, and this message today is on duty. So it's preserving peace through duty, and we're going to look at what Spiritism teaches us about duty, and also some practical applications so we better understand what that entails. So we look first at the book Thought and Life, chapter 21, which is entitled Duty. And this book is by the Spirit Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. And there we learn that duty is listening to our conscience. And it differs from obligation in that obligation comes from rules to maintain order. So, in fact, duty falls under obligation, so to speak, but the moral obligation. So we're not talking about professional work when we say duty. So it's a moral obligation that involves discipline. And why? Because this provides security for us. It's not to control or impose on us, but to provide us with security. So we can think of it a little bit where our professional work, so what we get paid for, our job description, so to speak, where they end, where professional work ends and charity begins. So this is giving without reward or credit or some kind of ego thing. It's just for the act of doing good. Then we turn to the gospel in chapter 17, item 7, which is entitled Be Perfect. And there we are provided with a spirit teaching from the Spirit Lazare. And again, he tells us it's a moral obligation, first to ourselves and then immediately to others. So when we talk about putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first and then someone else, it only takes seconds. So when we hear, I have to take care of myself, I can't do this or that, I have to take care of myself. This is not something for centuries, taking care of ourselves. It's a few minutes, and then we're there for others. So it really is more about being other-centered. It's not for so-called taking care of ourselves on and on and on and on. So to help us to understand that it is first to take care of ourselves, because, just in the airplane, if you don't have oxygen, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So Lazare goes on to tell us that duty begins at the moment we threaten our neighbor's peace of mind. And it ends at the limit we wouldn't want extended to ourselves. So let us just chew on that for a minute. It begins at the moment we threaten our neighbor's peace of mind. Now, it doesn't say our enemy or the people we love, it says our neighbor. So this is anybody indiscriminately. And it ends at the limit we wouldn't want extended to ourselves. So, there's a point where we want help from others, but it's not about smothering somebody. So we don't want to be smothered, and we don't want to do this to other people. So it is knowing when there is a limit to that. It's somewhat just like the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would want done to them. So yes, sometimes we need help, but we don't want someone telling us what to do. And also, sometimes we feel like we want that, but in essence, we don't. We also don't want someone busy in our business or, imposing. So there's some limits here they're describing to us. He tells us, Lazare, the spirit, says that duty is both strict and yielding because it's adaptable for all issues. But one thing's for sure is that it does not bend for temptation. So that's when we can see it remaining strict or disciplined. But it can bend, and there's no hard rule about it, as we can help other people. And that's going to be a variety of events, episodes, what people face, complications that arise. And he tells us that we really should love duty, and not only because it protects us from evil, or we want to say ignorance, or from vices, from ourselves and other people, other spirits, but it provides each of us with the strength to develop. So this is the real reason why we should love duty. So in some ways, it is for ourselves, but we don't do it with that intention of what good we're going to get. We do it with the intention of goodwill towards all. Lastly, he reminds us that our moral obligation to God never ceases. It's really beautiful. We also can look in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 5, Blessed are the afflicted. And in the back section, I think maybe it begins with item 20, I'm sorry. But it's the spirit teachings. In there, the various spirits talk to us about when we listen to our conscience, we can experience peace. And this is a relative happiness that we can experience on earth. And so when we feel content or at peace with our own conscience, it can help us to confirm that we have fulfilled our duties. So I want to look now very briefly, because NossoLar is a book we should all read. If we haven't, and even if we have, to reread it, because there's so many lessons and teachings in here for us to understand about navigating on life and on earth and in the spiritual realm. So there are two places in particular I'd like to acknowledge from this book that relate to this idea of preserving peace through duty. So we have a basic understanding of duty, the moral obligation. So in chapter 31, and again, just briefly, because I don't want to give too much information. I think we should all read on our own and learn on our own and understand on our own. But we do know basically this is a book about a physician and his experience in the afterlife. So we find ourselves in chapter 31 with Andre Luiz, who is the physician in the afterlife. And he's with some of his mentors learning about the virtues and how it works in the spiritual realm and how to be helpful. Because we remember he was a doctor on earth, but he finds himself realizing it's different to be a doctor in the spiritual realm compared to a doctor in the 1940s. Or even, I think it was about the 1940s. So in chapter 31, he's helping, he's in a special area where they're helping spirits who are suffering. And a woman comes to this community, and it's gated, right? Because there are various levels of spirits in NossoLar, some less virtuous than others. And a woman appears at the gate and wants to come in, that she appears as a beggar and she needs help and she wants help. And so Andre and his mentor at the time, Narcissa, they want to help the woman. They want to let her in, but they know the order of command that they need to speak with the guards there about letting her in. And the guard does not want to. And why? Because Andre is not able to see it, but the mentor and the guard are, because they're more elevated. And they can see that this woman, they can see the nature of her spirit, let me put it that way, which is not totally virtuous. So what the guard says to the mentor, because the mentor says, oh, I'll take responsibility. But what he says to her is, he says, letting her come in would be a dereliction of duty. And he goes on to explain, he says, because what good would guarding this place be if we didn't keep out harmful influences like that? And he says, because that the people there at NossoLar are wanting to improve themselves. And so this is what he's protecting. These people are recovering and they're wanting to improve themselves. But this woman is questionable about her intentions. And so he does not let her in. And he says, divine providence never gives up on anybody. She will find help somewhere else. But it would have been against real charity and the job I perform here if I had opened that gate for her. And so I hope that is somewhat of a teaser, if you haven't read NossoLar, to pick up the book to better understand this idea of duty. Because we can initially read that and think, oh, this is terrible. In the spiritual realm, they're not helping people. But we come to learn more about spirits and when we're in our spiritual bodies and, using the will and maybe not such a right way to disguise ourselves. So we can see in this chapter that idea of putting duty first, that his duty is to protect the colony there and to keep out harmful influences. So again, we find this protection is, service to the greater good there that he's covering. And then next would be to help the neighbor. But we find out this neighbor was not really seeking the same ideals that are in this gated community. And then there's another section, another chapter in the book, chapter 42, which I would say to anybody, whether you've read the book or not, to go back and read chapters 41 and 42, because it's talking about the effect of war on the spiritual realm. So the effect of war on the earth. So this was World War II at that time, so late 1930s, 1939, and how it impacted the spiritual realm, how they're involved too. Because remember, we're all connected and we all affect each other. So it's really worth reading because I think it helps us to understand what's going on today. And it is the very same. So no, it's not World War II. It's world over in the Middle East, but it doesn't matter. And we'll come to see that when you read these chapters. It's very apparent. So World War II is starting. And so the spiritual realm is affected and is responding. And so one of the governors, the governor of NossoLar, comes to speak to the community. And it's very interesting what he says to them. He says that, in NossoLar, we're devoted to serving higher designs and to working for our own moral improvement. Would it be fair and just then to allow the colony to be invaded by millions of rebellious individuals? No, we can't hesitate when it comes to defending the common good. And he says, I know many of you are thinking of Jesus at this moment. Yes, Jesus gave himself up to rioters and fanatics so that we could be redeemed. But he didn't abandon the world to chaos and ruin. He says, so therefore, the governor says, we should all be ready, as Jesus was, to make individual sacrifices. But we can't surrender NossoLar to wrongdoers. We must keep in mind that this community is a gift from God, and we have to protect it with all our hearts and souls. What we can't save through our own efforts, we aren't worthy to have or enjoy. So he goes on to tell the workers, he says, we can teach, we can help, and we can comfort others. But first and above all, we must organize a special defense group to safeguard our institution and its borders. So again, we hear these things and we think, oh, how can this be in the spiritual realm where, we want to anticipate that charity prevails? But we come to understand that just like putting the oxygen mask on first and then helping others, it's the same here, that we first must take care of ourselves. And this doesn't mean for centuries taking care of ourselves and using it as an excuse why we don't do good or help other people. And they're very clear to say, the spirits are very clear to tell us, immediately then help others. So I'd just like to close this evening's with a prayer. And these are words from Leon Denis in his book, After Death. It's part 5, chapter 43, and it too is entitled Duty. So let us close our eyes. Let us go within, opening our spiritual eyes, connecting our hearts and minds with elevated thoughts, bringing ourselves into the attention, the presence of our Mother, Father, God, Divine Creator, first cause of all things. May we be able to end each day by saying, we have accomplished some useful thing. We have won some victory over ourselves. We have comforted or assisted some needy person, people. We have enlightened our brothers and sisters and worked for their good. We have fulfilled our duty. So be it, and so it is. And we thank all the spirits who continue to guide, protect, and inspire this platform so that we too may continue to nourish our souls. Many blessings. Have a safe week, and let's remember to do good for someone else. Thank you so much.